From Lalo Salamanca, who was finally buried in the same lab he was obsessed with finding, to corrupt cops finally getting poetic justice for Mike, this is every person who deserved their death in Better Call Saul. Starting with Lalo Salamanca. Lalo Salamanca is easily the most charismatic villain in the entire Breaking Bad universe, but that's exactly what makes him so terrifying. When we first see him in Season 4, he brings a completely different energy to the cartel than we've ever seen. He shows up to the restaurant cooking food, and when Nacho sees him, Lalo acts like a friendly relative just stopping by to help out.
You are going to love this. I made this just for you.
But that smile is a mask for a man who is a vicious psychopath to the core. His cold-blooded nature is first fully revealed with the murder of my boy Fred Whalen at Travel Wire. While tracking Mike Ehrmantraut, Lalo needs information that Fred wouldn't give him.
So I was wondering if there's maybe something that, my friend missed. Show me what you showed him.
I can't. I'm sorry. You better just call the police.
The moment Fred gets distracted by a phone call, Lalo climbs into the ceiling, drops into Fred's booth from above, and murders him just to access the security footage. But in that office, he finds information on Werner Ziegler, Gus's lead engineer, and he later calls Werner, pretending to be one of Gus's men, and manipulates him into revealing details about the secret construction project.
I'm calling on behalf of Gustavo Fring.
This interference turned Werner into a loose end in Gus's eyes, which indirectly led to his execution. But y'all, Lalo's most disturbing act is the ultimate betrayal of Mateo and Sylvia Ramos. Now, if you don't remember them, for years, Lalo acted as a benefactor to this local couple, even paying for Mateo's dental work. But this wasn't out of kindness, as he was planning to use Mateo as a body double because they share a similar physical build. So after surviving the failed hit at his compound, Lalo shows up at their doorstep, and when Sylvia sees him bloodied and limping, she immediately lets him in. She even makes him coffee, sits him down, but when Mateo walks in, Lalo jokes, Sylvia tells Mateo to go shave, and Lalo casually tells him to keep the mustache and soul patch.
Oye, Mateo. Déjate el bigote, se te ve bien.
Then, while she steps away to make more coffee for him, Lalo quietly picks up a pair of scissors and kills them both. He then burns Mateo's body and leaves it at the site of the attack on his compound and vanishes into hiding. When the cousins arrive, they see the charred remains and they assume it's Lalo. He pre-planned a man's execution years in advance just for a backup escape plan. After faking his death, Lalo plans to sneak back into the US to take revenge on Gus Fring. He reaches a remote border location where two smugglers are preparing to load a group of undocumented immigrants into a secret compartment in a hay truck. Before boarding, Lalo calls his uncle Hector Salamanca, and Hector rings his bell to stop Lalo from going without solid evidence, and Lalo realizes he could find this proof, so he decides to not cross the border.
I changed my mind. Not going.
Lalo approaches the two smugglers and politely asks for his money back, but when the smugglers refuse, Lalo kills them before stealing a truck and driving back into Mexico.
Lo siento, pero van a tener que encontrar otra manera de llegar al norte.
But then Lalo travels to Germany, where he tracks down Casper, a member of the secret construction crew, to find proof of the superlab.
Guten Tag.
Guten Tag. Das ist Privatgelände. Do I know you?
I don't think we've officially met.
Casper, he grabs his axe and runs for cover inside the barn, hoping he could use the shadows and tight space to survive. As Lalo steps inside, searching for him, Casper does manage to catch him off guard, striking Lalo with the blunt end of his axe. For a moment, it feels like he might overpower Lalo, but when Casper gets close to him, he slashes his face with a razor blade and uses the axe to chop off his left foot. He then forces Casper to tie off the bleeding stump and reveal what he knows about Gus's operation and the construction of the superlab beneath the laundry.
Here. Tie that off before you bleed to death.
And after learning about the superlab from Casper, Lalo returns to ABQ and shows up at Jimmy and Kim's apartment while Howard is there. Guys, Howard, he's just a civilian who has absolutely nothing to do with the cartel and just is in the wrong place at the wrong time. While Jimmy and Kim are begging for Howard to leave,
I think I'm in the middle of something.
Lalo attaches a silencer to his gun and shoots Howard in the head before he even realizes what's happening. And I was personally not okay for days after I saw that scene. Then he forces them to follow his plan and sends Kim to Gus's house to kill him. But Lalo never intends for Kim to succeed. He just wanted Mike to call for help, which pulled Gus's remaining security away from the laundry. Once everyone is distracted, Lalo sneaks into the laundry facility, and inside he ambushes Gus's guards. He captures Gus and forces him to record a video showing the secret meth lab to send to Don Eladio as proof of Gus's betrayal.
¿Qué tal eso? ¡Wow! ¿No? Don Eladio, he escuchado algunas historias sobre este lugar.
He thinks he's got Gus cornered, holding him at gunpoint while laughing and mocking Gus, feeling completely untouchable.
Big talk. You done?
But Gus, he has a hidden gun for this exact moment. Gus kicks a power cord to cut the lights and manages to shoot Lalo in the neck and in the chest. Even in the end, as Lalo lies there wounded, he dies with a laugh while suffocating on his own blood. In a final bit of poetic justice, he's buried in a nameless grave right under the floor lab that he was so obsessed with finding. Troy Hoffman and Jack Fensky. Hoffman and Fensky were corrupt police officers in Philly and former colleagues of Mike Ehrmantraut. Really, the whole precinct was corrupted, including Mike, Hoffman, Fensky. They were some of the scum at the very top. Then Mike's son Matty, he was an honest rookie cop who just joined the force, and he didn't want any part of their corruption. When Hoffman offered Matty a cut of dirty money, he refused it, and he immediately called up his dad for help. Mike told him he wanted to go to internal affairs and expose the whole precinct, but Mike knows that would lead to a death sentence.
You know what a cop fears most? More than getting shot, more than anything. Prison. Being locked up with everybody you put away. You threaten a cop with that, you make him dangerous.
He warned Matty that if he didn't take the money, it would put a massive target on his back. And to get Matty to listen, Mike had to admit a truth that broke his son's heart.
I told him I did it too. That I was down in the gutter with the rest of them.
Matty eventually did take the cash because he trusted his father's advice, but Hoffman and Fensky, they didn't trust him. They didn't want to risk it because of how long he waited to accept the bribe. So they set up Matty by luring him to a crack house on a fake call. He went there thinking his partners had his back, but they were actually there to murder him. They then staged the whole thing to look like a random shooting just so they could go cover their tracks.
I got Matty to take the money, and they killed him 2 days later.
Mike, he knew exactly what these guys had done, but he also knew that there was no legal way to take them down. There was no proof, just the word of a broken father against two hero cops. But while they were busy looking down on him, Mike, he was already planning their deaths. He broke into their police cruiser one night to hide a gun deep between the seat cushions where he could reach it later. With the trap set, he goes to a bar and puts on the performance of a lifetime. He makes sure that Hoffman and Fensky sees him stumbling and slurring his words. He even walks over to their table and pulls him in real close, acting like a drunk who can't keep a secret.
I know it was you.
And them, they laugh it off at the table, but you can see the panic in their eyes. They realize Mike is a loose end that needs to be tied up. When the bar finally closes, Mike staggers down the street, and right on cue, Hoffman and Fensky pull up in their cruiser. Then they offer him a ride. They take his gun and put him in the back seat, thinking they've caught their prey. During the ride, Fensky, he tries to get Mike to admit what he knows, and Mike, he tells them exactly why they did it.
You killed Matty, and you killed him for nothing. You killed him because you were scared what you thought he might do.
That's the moment they realized they had to do something. So they drive him out to a dark, abandoned industrial area to finish what they started. They drag him out of the car and lean him up against a street lamp, stepping away to whisper about how they're going to frame it. Fensky, he suggests making it look like a suicide using Mike's own gun. And that's when the drunk act completely disappears.
Smart. That's what I would have done if I were you.
Mike reaches into his jacket, pulling out the gun he had stashed in the cruiser earlier. Fensky tries to fire the gun he took from Mike, but it just clicks since Mike had left it unloaded the whole time. Mike, he shoots Hoffman, instantly dropping him, while Fensky manages to get a shot off that nicks Mike right in the shoulder. But Mike fires back, hitting him in the neck. As Fensky tries to crawl away, gasping for air and reaching for his weapon, Mike walks over him, steps on his leg, and pins him down. Fensky looks up at him, begging for his life, but Mike has no mercy left for these men who murdered his son, and he finishes off Fensky, takes his gun, and walks away into the night. Arturo Colon. Arturo Cologne was one of Hector Salamanca's top guys and a key lieutenant in his crew with a crazy haircut. While he wasn't a mastermind like Lalo, he was the muscle that Hector used to bully anyone who got in the way of the Salamanca business. What made Arturo's death feel so deserved, though, was how much he enjoyed being a bully, guys. We saw this clearly when he went with Hector to Los Pollos Hermanos to intimidate Gus Fring. While Hector was acting like a lunatic and scaring the regular customers, "I want to see your boss," Arturo stood right by him, acting as a silent threat to help hijack the restaurant and make a room full of innocent people feel terrified. Even when a mother tried to leave with her child, he stood in front of the door and stopped her from leaving. He didn't move until Nacho told him to let her go. He showed that same cocky attitude again when he tried to scare Mike. He got Tuco arrested, and Hector tried to manipulate Mike into helping reduce Tuco's prison sentence. He even offered Mike $5,000 to claim the illegal gun found during Tuco's arrest was his and not Tuco's. But Mike, he's stubborn, he refused, and Hector, he made it clear that saying no was not an option. The next day, Mike returned home from his shift carrying groceries and noticed Arturo sitting on his front steps.
Hello, can I help you?
You know why I'm here? He needs an answer.
Respectfully, I'm gonna have to say no.
You sure about that?
I am.
Later, when Hector wanted to put more pressure on Mike, Arturo showed up at Mike's house again to send a message. Even after Mike caught him off guard, knocked him down, and pistol whipped him, Arturo, he didn't back off.
Take the 5,000. We were just supposed to scare you, that's all.
He believed that the Salamanca name made him untouchable, which was a mistake that ended up costing him his life. His arrogance had finally caught up to him in season 4 after Hector had his stroke. During a drug pickup, Arturo decided to cause a problem just to show off. Even though Gus's guys Victor and Tyrus only have 5 bags of drugs ready for them, Arturo demanded 6 just because.
Salamancas get 6. We're not leaving without 6.
He even made Nacho pull a gun to force the issue. And he eventually walked away with the extra bag, sure, but as they walked away to their car, Arturo was literally bragging about how he handled them. But as Arturo got to the car, Gus and Victor jumped out. Gus grabbed Arturo from behind, slammed him into the hood, and pulled a plastic bag over his head while Victor held Nacho at gunpoint. In a slow, brutal execution, Gus zip-tied the bag shut and tied Arturo's hands and feet so he couldn't fight back. Arturo spent his whole life enjoying the sight of other people pissing their pants, only to die a slow, helpless death in the end. Hector Salamanca. We first meet good old jolly happy Hector Salamanca in Better Call Saul right after Mike manages to get his nephew Tuco sent to prison. Hector, he's the old school head of the family who demands absolute respect and believes the Salamanca name makes him a god. The true depth of his cruelty is rooted in a moment years before the events of the show, though. The day he destroyed Gus Fring's life by murdering his partner, Max Arciniega. Gus and Max went to Mexico to pitch a new business idea to the cartel. They wanted to move from cocaine into meth, and they went to Don Eladio's compound to show off the high-quality product that Max had created. But even back then, Hector showed how little he cared for others. While Gus and Max were waiting for Eladio to arrive, Hector started urinating into the swimming pool. When Bolsa tried to stop him, Hector just laughed at the disrespect.
Loco, el jefe te va a cortar los huevos.
¿Qué le base dice? ¿Y ustedes?
And when Don Eladio didn't care about their business plan, they saw Gus and Max's ambition as pure disrespect. And before the conversation could even finish, a gunshot rang out, and Hector suddenly drew his weapon and shot Max right in the head. This cruelty wasn't just for his enemies, it was how he raised his own family. When his nephews, Marco and Leonel, were just little boys, they got into a fight and one of them said he wished the other was dead, as kids sometimes say. But then all of a sudden, Hector grabbed the boy and held his head underwater in a cooling tub. As the boy struggled for air, Hector told the other boy that
La familia es todo.
he was willing to nearly drown a child just to teach a cold lesson about loyalty. And y'all, we see this cruelty continue when he tries to bully Mike into helping Tuco. He offers Mike $5,000, as I just mentioned earlier, to the police and claimed that the gun found on Tuco actually belonged to Mike. When Mike says no, Hector doesn't just walk away. He escalates things until they become terrifying. He sends his men to Mike's house and eventually he sends the Salamanca twins to a motel where Mike's granddaughter Kaylee is playing in a pool. I'll never forget that scene. The twins stand on a nearby roof, staring down at the little girl and making a finger gun motion at her. Hector, he is perfectly fine with threatening a child's life just to get his psychopathic nephew a shorter prison sentence. Hector's cruelty towards innocent people is seen once again when Mike hijacks one of Hector's trucks and leaves the driver tied up. A regular guy pulls over to help. But instead of being thankful the driver survived, Hector gets the innocent bystander murdered and buried in the desert just to make sure there were no witnesses left behind who could expose them to the police. After Mike compromises Hector's smuggling route by hijacking his trucks, he needs a new way to get his drugs across the border. So he tries to force his way into Gus Fring's distribution network. He tries to intimidate Gus by storming Los Pollos Hermanos, I need to see your boss, with his guns during peak hours when the restaurant is filled with normal people.
Cabron, I need to see your boss.
Okay, well, I'm the assistant manager. The manager's actually not here today.
No, the manager. The boss.
You mean Mr. Fring?
Mr. Fring.
Hector doesn't care that he's in a public place full of families. He lights a cigar right under a no smoking sign, completely ignoring the assistant manager, my boy Lyle, who politely asks him to stop.
Excuse me, sir. You can't light that in here. Sir, there's no smoking on the premises.
Hector and his goons then essentially take the restaurant hostage, surrounding the customers and making the families too scared to move. When a mother tries to leave with her child, one of Hector's men, Arturo, he physically blocks the door, refusing to let them out. When Gus finally arrives, though, he finds his employees being held hostage and has to close the restaurant just to keep them safe.
I want you all to go home now. You will be compensated for your full shifts. Normal schedule tomorrow. Go now. We are closed for today.
Once the employees are gone, Hector demands that Gus start being his new distributor. I am the cartel, and from now on, you are my mule. You're going to bring my product north. Since Hector wouldn't take no for an answer, Gus eventually agrees to avoid violence. And we also see how he enjoys corrupting good people like Nacho's father, Manuel Varga. Hector decides he wants to use Manuel's upholstery shop as a front for drugs, even though he knows Manuel is an honest, hard-working man. He corners Papa Varga in his own shop and tries to force him into the business.
Relájate. Somos amigos.
When Manuel refuses to be a part of the cartel, Hector starts planning to take the shop by force, not caring at all that he's destroying someone's life.
Váyase de mi taller.
Papá, por favor, Don Hector es muy generoso. No seas irrespetuoso. Piensa en tía Rosa y las gemelas. La familia de mamá en Galeana.
But Nacho knows his father would never willingly agree, and Hector would eventually have to kill him. So to save his father, Nacho decides to take matters into his own hands. He manages to steal Hector's heart medication and swaps the pills with fake ones that don't work. And the plan finally plays out during a meeting with the cartel.
It is personal.
Hector gets into a massive argument, and the stress, it triggers a heart attack. He reaches for his pills, but since they're fakes, he collapses and suffers a massive stroke. Gus saves him, but as we've already seen, he only does it so he can keep Hector alive as a prisoner in his own body. Hector, he spends the next few years trapped in a wheelchair, unable to speak, and forced to watch Gus take over everything he built. His final end, it doesn't come until the end of Breaking Bad, though, and by this point, Hector has lost his entire family. His nephews, his grandson, and his cousins are all dead. When Walter White approaches him with a plan for revenge, Hector finally sees a way out. Hector baits Gus into coming to his nursing home by pretending to have spoken and ratted to the DEA. And Gus, wanting to be the only one to finally finish Hector off, walks right into the trap.
Is that how you want to be remembered?
Gus, he prepares a lethal injection, but as he's about to kill him, Hector looks Gus right in the eyes with a look that shows he finally has the upper hand. He starts ringing his bell as fast as he can, ding ding ding, and sets off a pipe bomb that Walt hid under his wheelchair. The explosion is massive. It destroys the entire room and kills every man in there instantly. Gus Fring. Gus Fring is a lot different from the other people on this list. He doesn't go around screaming or acting like a typical drug lord. Instead, he acts like a normal, polite businessman who runs a chicken restaurant. But behind that, he's incredibly cold, doesn't care about anyone. There are multiple moments where we see that he actually enjoys making his enemies suffer. He's willing to kill anyone who gets in his way, even if they aren't a part of the business. One of the most messed up things he does is how he treats Hector Salamanca. When Hector has a stroke, Gus is the one who saves him by doing CPR, but he ain't doing it to be nice. He does it because he wants to be the one to torture Hector, like we just mentioned. He pays for the best doctors to bring Hector's mind back, but as soon as Hector is awake and can understand what's happening, Gus stops the treatment.
To delegate Mr. Salamanca's care.
Are you sure? Hector's progress is very promising. He may eventually learn how to talk and even walk again.
Perhaps we should temper our expectations.
He wants Hector to stay trapped in his own body, unable to move or talk, but just alive enough to know what's happening, just so he can visit him and rub it in his face. Even tells Hector a story about how he trapped a coati as a kid and kept it alive just to see it suffer. A lot of parallels. He basically treats Hector like a pet he can torment whenever he wants, refusing to let him have a peaceful death. But Gus is just as cold towards the people building his empire, like Werner Ziegler. Werner, he's the lead engineer hired to build his secret super lab, and eventually he becomes homesick, and he makes the mistake of sneaking out for a couple of days just to see his wife. But things go south when Lalo calls Werner's motel, pretending to be a part of Gus's crew. Werner accidentally gives Lalo just enough information about the project to raise major alarms. Even though Mike begs Gus to show mercy and argues that Werner can be trusted to finish the job, Gus doesn't care. He decides that since Werner stepped out of line and spoke to a Salamanca, he is now a liability who must be removed from play. Mike, he drives Werner out in the middle of the desert, where he finally accepts his fate and walks out into the sand to look at the stars one last time.
There are so many stars visible in New Mexico. I will walk out there to get a better look.
While Werner is looking away, Mike kills him with a single shot to the back of the head. But guys, the most calculated cruelty Gus displays in Better Call Saul is how he breaks and uses Nacho Varga. Once Gus finds out that Nacho was the one who caused Hector's stroke, he uses that to turn Nacho into his spy.
I know what you've done. From now on, you are mine.
To make sure Nacho does what he says, Gus threatens to kill Nacho's father, Manuel. Nacho's dad, he's a regular guy who has nothing to do with the cartel, but Gus has no problem using him as a way to control Nacho. When Gus wants him to spy on Lalo, he has his men abduct Nacho and sends Victor to act if he's about to execute his father in front of a restaurant.
Lalo Salamanca. I need to know where he is going, what he is thinking, what he is planning. I need to know what he's going to do before he does it.
After using Nacho as his eyes and ears inside the Salamanca organization for years, Gus eventually tasks him with a mission that can only lead in Nacho's death. He orders Nacho to help set up a massive ambush on Lalo's compound in Mexico, forcing him to unlock the back gate in the middle of the night to let a team of professional assassins inside. During this hit, Gus shows how far he's willing to go by letting his team kill everyone on the property. The assassins don't just target Lalo, they slaughter the entire household, including the housekeeper Yolanda and the gardener Cecilio. They were innocent people who weren't even a part of the drug trade, but Gus is completely fine with them being murdered as long as it helps him get to Lalo. Things, they only get worse for Nacho when the hit fails. Lalo, he survives the attack, kills every agent Gus sent, and notices Nacho's untouched drink sitting on the table. And he realizes right then that Nacho betrayed him for Gus. When Nacho finally does get to safety, Nacho contacts Mike, and Gus orders him to give a false confession, claiming a rival cartel paid him to betray Lalo, just to keep the heat off of himself. The next morning, Nacho is captured, beaten, and taken out to the desert, where Hector, Bolsa, Gus, and the cousins are all waiting to execute him.
Tell me what I need to know. I'll see that your death is a good one.
Nacho initially goes with what they planned, lying to protect Gus's secret, but he eventually refuses to play along, and he goes off script.
Alvarez has been paying me for years, but you know what? I would have done it for free because I hate every last one of you psycho sacks of shit. I opened Lalo's gate, and I would do it again, and I'm glad what they did to him.
Gus stands there and watches as the man he has tormented and blackmailed for years kills himself, showing absolutely zero remorse as it happens. He treats Nacho like a disposable piece of equipment. But there was one problem he'd later face in Breaking Bad that eventually led him to his death. Walter White. When Walt became unpredictable and dangerous for business, Gus openly threatened to kill everyone he loved.
I will kill your wife. I will kill your son. I will kill your infant daughter.
That single line, it showed Gus he had no limits anymore, and that Walt wasn't just in danger, but his entire family was too. And so desperate and out of options, Walt realized the only way to survive was to strike first. And to do that, he needed to use Gus's obsession with Hector against him. When Hector shows up to the DEA office and mocks Hank by writing absurd notes on a piece of paper, to everyone else it looks like nonsense, but Gus's men are secretly watching. When they see Hector leaving the DEA office, Gus becomes convinced Hector has betrayed the cartel, leading him to the nursing home where he mocks Hector for breaking his silence. But Hector, he doesn't look away. He locks eyes with Gus, and for a brief moment, Gus thinks he sees tears. Then Hector's face hardens. He slams the bell on his wheelchair over and over. In that instant, Gus realizes what's happening. but it is already too late. The explosion rips through the room, killing both of them instantly. And what follows is one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. Gus walks out of the room, calmly adjusting his tie as if nothing happened, but when the camera turns over, half of his face is blown off before his body finally collapses. But what do you think? Did we miss anyone who deserved to die in the show, or was there someone on this list you actually felt bad for? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out our video over here. It's a banger. I'll be there, I promise you, and I hope to see you there too. Thanks for watching, commenting, have a good one.